Welcome back to the Warbird Mistress. Today is Sunday the 15th of February, 1942, and this is A Walk Through the War. I want to begin first by apologizing for the delay in getting this out. I had some issues with Adobe's suite of software, but all's fixed, and on we go. In the American Theater of Operations, beginning with the 3rd Air Force, the 89th Reconnaissance Squadron Medium and 95th Bombardment Squadron Medium of the 17th Bombardment Group Medium transfers from Pendleton Field, Oregon, to Columbia Army Air Base, South Carolina, with B-25 Mitchells, to continue ASW patrols, or so the official records reflect. In reality, the 17th Bomb Group is being transferred in response to their 9th of February acceptance of an offer to participate in a, quote, extremely hazardous mission. The men are beginning their preparations for what will be known as the Doolittle Raid. Moving across the globe to the China-Burma-India Theater of Operations, in the greatest disaster to befall the British Empire, Japanese forces on the Malay Peninsula take the fortress city of Singapore. While the lines had held over the previous night, flak ammunition was nearly exhausted, deserting troops had looted merchant districts, the water supply system was nearly inoperable, and there was little fuel, food, or fight left in the city. After debating a counterattack that morning, and unaware that the Japanese supply lines are tenuous at best and their artillery nearly out of shells, Lieutenant General Arthur Percival orders the surrender of the remaining 85,000 personnel to General Yamashita, bringing the total number of captured British, Indian, Australian, and other Commonwealth and Imperial troops and personnel in the Malaya campaign to 130,000. And it signals the beginning of 4 years under the brutal, bloody, and inhuman shadow of the rising sun. In another note of bad news for the Allies, we move to the European Theater of Operations, where Lieutenant Colonel Townsend Griffiths, Major General James Cheney's aide-de-camp, dies when British Overseas Airway Company's unarmed B-24, in which he was traveling from Cairo to London, was shot down in a friendly fire incident by Polish fighter pilots of the RAF, after a case of mistaken identity. The aircraft had been picked up by radar over Saint-Malo, and the 2 Spitfires of the No. 317 Wielensky or City of Vilno Squadron were sent to intercept the aircraft. Upon spotting the relatively unknown Liberator and observing her dive into cloud cover, they shot her down. The pilots had erroneously presumed the aircraft to be a Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor taking evasive maneuvers, not a B-24 avoiding being spotted over contested airspace. But who am I to judge, I suppose? This unfortunate incident makes Griffiths the first American airman in the European theater in the service of his own country to die in the line of duty in the Second World War. And with that, we move to Monday, the 16th of February, 1942. In the American Theater of Operations, 3rd Air Force, the 34th and 37th Bombardment Squadrons Medium of the 17th Medium Bomb Group transfer from Pendleton Field, Oregon to Columbia Army Air Base to join the other squadrons from the 17th Group preparing for the raid on Tokyo. And going to the Southwest Pacific area, in the 5th Air Force, the headquarters of the 49th Pursuit Group Interceptor and the P-40s of the 7th Pursuit Interceptor Squadron transfer from Melbourne to Bankston, just outside Sydney, while the Warhawks of the 8th Pursuit Squadron Interceptor move from Melbourne to Canberra. The A-24 Banshee dive bombers of the 16th Light Bomb Squadron of the 27th Light Bomb Group, for whom this may or may not be an anachronistic unit insignia, restationed today from Brisbane to get closer to the action with the top enders up in Batchelor, about 60 miles south of Darwin, at the entrance to Litchfield National Park. And I want to give the people at Batchelor a little shout-out since I know they've put together a little museum out of the single-service women's quarters there, and despite setbacks recent years, they've been doing a fair dinkum job putting their shoulders into preserving their town's history, including the contributions to the war and during the Rum Jungle days. That photo there's from their website, by the way, so cheers to you down there in Batchelor, and I hope to be back to see it in the future one day. And with that, we move on to Tuesday, the 17th of February, 1942. In the Southwest Pacific area, the 5th Air Force B-17s of the 88th Reconnaissance Squadron Heavy, 7th Bomb Group Heavy, continue their journey to India as they fly from Fiji to Australia. Further north in Alaska, with the 11th Air Force, Colonel Lionel Dunlap arrives from the ZI and becomes commanding officer of the 11th Air Force. While in the zone of the interior herself, the 10th Air Force, based out of Patterson Field, Ohio, receives a new commanding officer in the person of Colonel Harry Halverson. And with that, we move ahead 24 hours again to Wednesday, the 18th of February, 1942. The action here today is in the Southwest Pacific area of the 5th Air Force. Following in the footsteps of the 88th Heavy Recon Squadron, the 7th Bomb Group's 22nd Heavy Bomb Squadron also leaves Fiji to Australia with their B-17s. Meanwhile, in the Dutch East Indies, the air echelon of the 91st Bomb Squadron, 27th Bomb Group, begins operating from Malang, Java against the advancing Japanese forces with their Douglas A-24s, the Banshee being the Army version of the Dauntless. And that takes us to Thursday, the 19th of February, 1942. As Japanese forces from Makassar begin their landings at Bali, they are greeted by an afternoon combined strike of A-24 dive bombers, P-40 escorts, and B-17s. They fly out of Javan airfields at Malang, Madiun, and Yogyakarta in what becomes 2 days of anti-shipping strikes. The bombers and their escorts strike hard at the Japanese landing craft and support vessels, while the P-40s do double duty in fending off Japanese bombers attempting to strike at Java. Meanwhile, to the south, it is a dark day in Australian history, as Japanese bombers unload their deadly cargo on troop ships in Darwin Harbour, as they are packed with troops destined for the defense of Timor. The city herself is bombed, and all but a single of the 10 P-40s sent to Darwin to serve as the convoy's escorts are destroyed. The first wave comes from the carriers Akagi, Kaga, Hiryu, and Soryu of the 1st Carrier Air Fleet, led by Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had also led the assault against Pearl Harbor. It included 81 Nakajima B-5N Kates, 71 Aichi D-3A Val dive bombers, and a complement of A-6M Zeeks. The Kates were loaded with 1,800 pounds of bombs for level bombing and not with torpedoes. Although a PBY and C-47 are destroyed en route, and Father John McGrath of Bathurst Island's Sacred Heart mission uses his pedal-powered radio to warn Darwin of the incoming raid, his report is mistaken for being one of an incoming flight of P-40s who had been on their return leg to Darwin, and no alarm was raised until the Japanese arrive over their target at 2 minutes to 10. After a furious half hour, the USS Peary, the U.S. Army transport Meigs, the MV British Motorist, MV Neptuna, SS Mauna Loa, the SS Zealandia, all are sunk in the harbor, while the water lighter Carolee and the 3-masted full-rig iron sailing ship Her Majesty's Australian ship Kellott, at the time serving as a coal hulk, are fatally struck. Darwin's airbase, civilian airport, army barracks, and oil tanks are also struck, while between 3 and 5 aircraft are shot down by ground fire, with only a single Val lost and another damaged by the P-40 of Lieutenant Robert Oestreicher that day. Only 2 hours later the sirens ring again, as 27 Nels from Ambon and 27 Bettys from Kendari arrive at 11:58. They come in from the northeast and southwest at 18,000 feet to strike the Royal Australian Air Force Base Darwin. Nearly defenseless due to defective fuses in their heavy flak guns, the airbase suffers heavy damage, including approximately 30 aircraft, although casualties are light. A final third raid that day involves a small flight of Vals which attacked the U.S. Army transport Don Isidro and the American supply ship SS Florence D, both part of the 8 ships which had tried to run the blockade of the Philippines, whence only 3 had emerged successful. After today, Australia will not be the same. In other business today, in the Pacific Ocean area, the 7th Air Force Base Command is activated. Their responsibility is base operations, support services, and service functions, and they serve alongside the 7th Bomber and 7th Fighter Commands. Across the divide in the Caribbean, the 20th Transport Squadron, Panama Air Depot of the 6th Air Force transfers from France Field to Howard Field in the Canal Zone with C-39s, C-47s, and C-49s, the latter being the Impress DC-3 planes now in military service. And finally, a little bit to the northeast, the 32nd Pursuit Squadron Interceptor of the 36th Pursuit Group Interceptor transfers from Losey Field to Arecibo, Puerto Rico, with their P-36 Mohawks. And with that, we move to Friday, the 20th of February, 1942. Beginning in the European Theater of Operations, Brigadier General Ira Eaker arrives in the United Kingdom with 6 staff officers as preparations to bring the fight to the Axis begin in earnest. In the Pacific Ocean area of the 7th Air Force, the 19th Pursuit Squadron Interceptor of the 18th Pursuit Group Interceptor transfers from Wheeler Field down the mountain to Bellows Field with their P-40s. And finally, in the Southwest Pacific area, arriving at Tonesville today from Fiji are the B-17s of the 7th Heavy Bomb Group's 88th Heavy Recon Squadron and a detachment from the 22nd Heavy Bombardment Squadron, the latter being under U.S. Navy command for the time being. And that takes us to Saturday, the 21st of February 1942, where we remain in the Southwest Pacific area of the 5th Air Force. Beginning today and ending on the 1st of March, following up on the string of strikes which had ended on the 18th, 5th Air Force bombers take part in approximately 20 anti-shipping strikes against Japanese targets in the Java Sea and against the landing beaches on Bali. Flying in 2 and 3 aircraft elements, 11 of the strikes are complete failures, while the others only cause light damage to Japanese facilities and shipping, and they all fail to deter the invasion of Java in any serious way. And as American troops and airmen continue to face the Japanese, Major General George Brett, Deputy Commanding General ABDA, makes a determination that continued American involvement will be futile, and informs the War Department of the decision to evacuate both American ground troops and the 5th Air Force from the island of Java. And finally, for Sunday, the 22nd of February 1942, still remaining in the Southwest Pacific area with the 5th Air Force, A-24s from the 27th Light Bomb Group's 17th Light Bomb Squadron continue to arrive at Batchelor from Brisbane to reinforce the air assets there against possible Japanese invasion. The ground echelon, however, continues to slug it out in Bataan against the Japanese horde face to face, as the struggle over the peninsula continues into its dark days. And that was Sunday the 15th of February 1942 through Sunday the 22nd of February 1942. So I want to thank you all for your patience. Obviously there's a couple of videos that I crammed into this one, so it is a longer episode, and the next one will begin with the 23rd and move forward because I know today's the 25th, so obviously there's more to come. And there's actually 5 more years to come. So for those of you wondering about why there's not other videos coming out as frequently, I just want to say that between work, between life, and everything else, that right now this is the best way, I think, to continue to put out material regularly. Of course, you could join the Facebook group and you could even do live chats of people like that. Actually, I think I could do live now on YouTube because I'm up to, I think, just shy of 1,900 subscribers compared to 700 something only a little over a week ago. So I'm ecstatic, I'm flattered, I'm humbled, and I really appreciate the support. Also, shout out to new Patreon subscribers as well as donors, and I know that there is a couple of parcels waiting on the front porch that for some reason didn't go out, so I did drop those off today, and any of you that ordered mugs, canvases, etc. will be receiving them soon. It is, very meaningful to me that you help with the financial costs of, running the channel and also just promoting it through your own love of aviation, your discussion, your comments, and I'm sure taking a sip from my mug while watching my videos and hoping your boss doesn't catch you definitely is a help too. So it gets the word out there, and you'd be surprised, I think, how many people really are entranced by military aviation history, and I know we certainly are, and I thank you for coming by for the trip. So until next time, this is Claire, and I am the Warbird Mistress. Take care.